$5 welcome dollar to gaming. Wait.
Media based on toys tends to be a shot in the dark as far as success. On the one hand, you have Transformers. On the other, you have the Bots Master. For every G.I. Joe, you'll have a Rubik the Amazing Cube. And while I'm near the subject of action figures, Cool Girl, also called Sci-Girls. They're a type of action figure made by Blue Box Toys, Takara, and their eventual merger, Takara Tomy, the same people behind Transformers and Beyblade among several other toys. In the Sci-Girls universe, they're an all-female paramilitary group called the Cardinal Garrison, or CG. They've been around since World War II and fight crime and criminal conspiracies wherever they arise.
Take that, crime, you shit!
The Sci-Girls moniker is a nickname by witnesses to their feats who don't know what the team's CG logo stands for.
Kinda like how I used to think NFL stood for No Feet Allowed. I was 4 at the time, give me a break.
The line released 55 figures between 2000 and 2010, including several based on TV and movie characters, like from Ghost in the Shell or Cutie Honey. It was in the midst of this stretch that someone had the idea to make a video game based off of them, and thus Sci-Girls was made for the PS2 and released in 2004. Great care was made to make sure it didn't release on the same day as any other major releases in any region, especially not in Japan where, well, at least nothing in the US overshadowed it?
Never mind, let's just get to the game so we can get... There are 2 discs.
I don't mean there are 2 discs as in it's one game split across 2 discs, like some Resident Evil titles were. There are 2 discs and each is labeled as its own distinct game, Sci-Girls Ice and Sci-Girls Asuka.
Given what I paid for this game, that means I paid $1 per disc. Which means the chance of this being worth the price of admission just drastically increased.
Regardless of which disc you put in, you get the same intro which shows the 2, wait, this looks a lot like Jenny's opening in Primal Fury. Except in that one she was coming out of the shower, and never mind, we already have fan service. Not that I'm surprised, I mean, this game is based on a figure line which had an official bootleg with swappable torsos with bigger breasts. Did I neglect to mention that? Because that was a thing.
Now the question is, how do I review this? I'm basically covering 2 games, albeit similar games, at the same time. I think I'll just have to start with one and then check in on the other as the video goes on. And we're starting with Ice.
Both campaigns start with the same monotone monologue. In the year 2058, Damnation Monday occurs, a day when all of the world's electrical supplies shut down and everyone loses their collective shit.
In one short day of global electrical failure, the world's political and economic structures crumbled.
Remember how there were no political or economic structures until electricity was invented?
And it's time for an extended wannabe James Bond video, with an extended version of the intro song, this time with lyrics. No, wait, those aren't lyrics, they're just overproduced in-game voice clips of Ice. Something about this song doesn't feel right. Aside from being pretty generic, the 2 parts of it don't fit well together and
I'll save you the music theory lesson and just move on.
in a high-rise apartment overlooking unnamed city, the game immediately throws the camera into the shower with Ice. At the rate this game's going, it'll have a control scheme that lets you play with one hand. She gets a phone call on her... whatever the hell this thing is. Smash cut to Ice talking with a hacker named Sancho Poco. I am not making that name up. Ice is a fellow hacker and firearms expert hired to infiltrate the building of a group called Net Justice in Buenos Aires, which holds a database of personal information they can rewrite, particularly in the case of criminal records, and or sell off that information to the highest bidder. Who hired them? Never explained.
Of course security is tighter than you can ever imagine.
which is precisely why you were able to fire a zipline into the side of the building, blowtorch your way through the ceiling, and land in an empty hallway with nobody noticing and no alarms going off. Just see what Asuka's up to.
Asuka, spelled without the U, presumably because the localization crew were sick of English speakers pronouncing it Asuka, starts her story as part of the Cardinal Garrison, having abandoned her post and not answering their calls. Fortunately, CG doesn't give a shit, as they delete the part of the order about apprehending her and subjecting her to sanctions from headquarters. She's in Japan with her brother Kogetsu, supplying B-roll for Naruto on the way to a mansion, where they plan to avenge their father's death.
But how's the organization doing? I guess they're not very happy about me abandoning the mission.
Oh, he's a deserter! That's... great. Wait, was he somehow in the all-female paramilitary squad?
We are nothing but puppets anyway. They use us up and throw us away.
You're going to be like this for most of the game, aren't you?
If Asuka's voice sounds familiar, then holy shit, you're a huge nerd. She's voiced by Mari Iijima, a Japanese singer-songwriter better known as Minmay from the Macross series. So no, that's not a fake accent. An accent that her brother doesn't have at all.
I'll go in through the back. You sneak into the main frame in the main hall and find proof that'll stand up.
And so begins Ice's quote-unquote tutorial stage. Her game is a low-rent mix of Metal Gear Solid and Charlie's Angels. Not the TV show, the video game based on the movie. The inventory system in particular is very similar to Metal Gear Solid's. Not surprising considering A, it's made by Konami, and B, it released in the same year as Snake Eater, Twin Snakes, and Acid. In fact, in the US, this came out 2 weeks after Twin Snakes. Anyway, Ice's problems are numerous, but the biggest ones are twofold. One, she's a firearms expert, and while the auto-lock for every enemy drives that point home, in this universe it means that she has absolutely no melee moves. No punches, no kicks, no chokeholds, no knives, no blocking, nothing. When Harry Mason has more unarmed combat moves than you and you're supposed to be some kind of mercenary, something has gone terribly wrong. The closest thing she has is a shock taser, that's more effective on boxes because it takes an ice age to take out and fire. Ice can carry a few different guns, but she can't switch between them in-game. She can switch between several grenades and items, but not weapons. You have to pause, go to the weapons menu, and make the change there. She can dodge, but it's usually a bit slow and doesn't actually dodge anything. Her jump is pathetic, to the point that she can't clear many shin-high objects. One-handed cartwheels? Sure. Jumping? Nah.
It's kind of sad when I can look at the main character of this disc and say, holy shit, I'm more athletic than you. And just to prove I'm not talking out of my ass... There, point made.
Ice moves at either a slow jog or a snail's pace of a walk, both of which feel way too slow. Ice can't duck unless she's leaning against a wall or just did a roll dodge. She can flop to the ground and fire at enemies from there, but otherwise she will not duck or crawl, even if it means bypassing otherwise simple obstacles and generally making her job a hell of a lot easier. And lastly, the controls. Ice can't turn in place. She has to move forward while turning. If you've ever played Shenmue and tried walking in a tight space with Ryo, it's kind of like that. This is because I selected Novice mode for the camera, which locks it behind the character and generally gives the game more control of the view than the player. I liked it so much, I switched it off after a couple levels. Also, there are 2 item buttons, triangle and R2, and 2 attack buttons, circle and R1. Just making one of those a strafe button would have saved a lot of trouble. Meanwhile, Asuka has the exact opposite movement problem. She either moves way too slow or ridiculously fast. I was glad to have a character who gets through stages quickly, but several stages ask for more precise movement, or otherwise taking your time, forcing you to slow down. On the plus side, her main method of attack is her katana, and she has shurikens and kunai she can pick up for long-ranged attacks. Melee and ranged options. Congratulations, you're already far better than Ice. Add in that she can block anything, including bullets, by holding the attack button, when it wants to work, jump much higher, and even use a hook to grapple to out-of-reach places, and you might wonder why they didn't just make one game about this character. Then you realize how finicky the hook is. You have to aim it right at the edge or rail you want to grab, or Asuka will just fall to the ground. Standing too close to anything will cause her to instantly stop moving, and even when you do aim it right, sometimes Asuka falls for no apparent reason. Also, her regular attacks are really dull. She has one 3-swing sword combo she does for the entire game, and a leaping strike which is so floaty I never managed to hit anything with it. However, she also has attacks called fatal blows she does in certain situations, like when she comes up behind someone or gets close enough to a group of enemies. You do these by pressing attack once.
It's like the easy button, but with way more special effects and slightly less death.
Even these can be a pain in the ass. Outside of them not activating consistently, sometimes you'll do one to a group of enemies, but not all of the enemies. So the extra 1 or 2 or 3 disappear from the screen and then reappear to attack you when the mini cutscene ends. When it does, Asuka and the camera will almost always end up pointing at a wall or turning you around, leaving you open to get shot some more. Asuka also has certain ninja abilities she can pick up throughout the game, like the Shinsoku, which makes her move faster for a short distance, or the Yutsusemi, which uses a body double trick to avoid taking damage. They're nice to have, but they lead to another problem. Asuka finds various grenades, like Ice does, as well as a number of key items, so the in-game inventory, which only displays 4 items at a time, gets ridiculously crowded in a hurry. You almost have to use the pause menu, otherwise you'll spend way too long scrolling through the items looking for whatever you need at the time. Of course, because these games share similar mechanics, both suffer from some of the same problems. For one, both are apparently trying to be stealthy, but wear heels which click loudly whenever they move. I say apparently because of clips like this.
You'd better not get on that elevator. A security guard might come right away.
What, you mean like the dozens of guards I shot in the head up to this point? This clip from Asuka's campaign is even more hilariously out of place.
We are not murderers. No matter how much we might like to, we don't kill without reason.
Emergency code 187. Emergency code 187. Locating stopped code. Murder, death, kill. Murder, death, kill.
It's okay though, by the sound of it, all the enemies are wearing the same heels they are. That aside, the cover system is a joke, as both Ice and Asuka can't attack without completely leaving cover, making them an easy target if any enemy decides to shoot them. The apparent solution to this, at least in the earlier levels, is to make almost every enemy rock stupid, to the point they don't have enough brain power to walk, talk, and or attack at the same time. Keep in mind I played both games on the normal difficulty, and there is an easy setting. I didn't play it, but I imagine the guards would behave like this.
Hey!
Even then, some parts of the environment flat out don't work with the cover mechanic, as you won't be able to see into the room, the wall will bend in some way leaving you unable to attack, even when you're supposedly out of cover, your character will just shoot the wall, you won't be able to take cover at all, or my favorite scenario, you'll get shot anyway even though you're behind cover. With one exception, both characters go to the same levels throughout their games. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Both characters make use of a map system which shows mission objectives and points of interest. This is helpful except when it highlights places or things you can't access yet, don't need yet, or already used and don't need anymore. Or when the objective is vague and doesn't give a good idea of what to do or where to go. Or when all of these pile up and make it way too hard to tell where anything is. Both also have someone to talk to who guides them through the mission. This person speaks up automatically and may or may not say something to change or add mission objectives. They can also be talked to by hitting select, but in that case they either repeat themselves or ramble about unrelated shit, so it's not helpful at all. Both characters can save and load anywhere, but when you do that, it doesn't actually save or load where you are, what items you have, or what objectives you completed. No, it only saves progress up to the last checkpoint you hit. and even then I had times where I was thrown back a couple checkpoints when I tried to load my last save. And finally, both characters can use certain terminals to jump into Side D, which is structured similarly to the real world but with more wireframes. In some levels, it looks like you hacked into a Virtual Boy. No weapons can be used here, so it's exclusively hand-to-hand combat for either character. Yes, Ice suddenly remembers what punching and kicking are when she's in Side D, and forgets it again when she's in the real world.
Could someone call up Two-Face and tell her how to throw a punch?
It's dirt simple, my boy. Ball up the fist, reach way back, and assert yourself.
In Side D, you download, decode, modulate, or destroy various files, all within 10 minutes because if you're in longer than that, you lose your mind and it's game over. You fight past various security programs in the form of leeches, speedballs, spider legs, flying fidget spinners,
giant enemy crab,
and dancer things well versed in Simpson foo.
If you get hit, it's your own fault.
You have a quick attack and a strong attack, which work both on the ground and in the air, so there's a bit more variety to combat. Unless you're Asuka, because you lose your ranged attack. You also find various skills, several of which are necessary to get through the game and show up multiple times throughout, even after you had to get them to complete an earlier stage. To use them, you have to hold L1, input a button combination, then release it. It shows a grid for what abilities can be input, but some combinations are so long it's hard to tell what they are. On the plus side, the skill doesn't activate until after letting L1 go, so you can do the inputs, keep L1 held down, and then let it go when you want to use it. Some of the skills are really helpful, like slow or high jump, even if the latter is a pain in the ass to aim. But weapons aren't the only thing missing from the real world. Neither character can grab ledges in Side D. You're supposed to be able to jump higher by standing next to a ledge and jumping toward it, but it's so inconsistent I wasted a lot of my 10 minutes just trying to get back to the terminal. Oh, right, you can only leave Side D through these dive out points, so you have to backtrack to the terminal to leave before time runs out. Finally, both characters are rated after each stage according to difficulty, clear time, and cool shots. For Asuka, that means Fatal Blow special attacks, and for Ice that means doing a dive before shooting people? I don't know. The ranking is only affected by cool shots, so going slow or dying and continuing a lot doesn't really matter. These rankings range from D to SS, and also show what items carry over to the next level. Now the question is, what do these rankings do? What do you get for having, say, A ranks the whole way through, or all S's, or all double S's?
Nothing! Some of the problems I've mentioned to this point are pretty minor, some of them are pretty bad, but nothing is egregiously bad. Nothing's gonna make you throw down the controller, box up the game, and return it for way less than you paid for it. But I haven't mentioned the two biggest problems with the game, and I'm talking about both Ice and Asuka's discs. Backtracking, and crappy puzzles.
Remember the first Resident Evil? Remember the two major gripes people had with it? Not the voice acting, that was Shakespeare quality. The controls, which frankly I never had a problem with, and backtracking all over the mansion. Get a key or crank or emblem or fertilizer, remember where you might need to use it, and backtrack to solve a puzzle or open a door. The first disc leads up to infiltrating the underground Umbrella Lab. The amount of backtracking and puzzle solving on that entire first disc is only slightly higher than the backtracking and puzzles in a couple missions of Sci-Girls. Note that there are 16 missions across both discs, so each disc of Sci-Girls is the rough equivalent of 4 Resident Evil Disc 1s in backtracking. Take the Peruvian Ruins stage, for example, which both characters go through, but I'll cover Ice's side this time. She starts at the top of the stage with some ancient text she can't decode. She has to go down a floor, find a decoder, then go back up to decode them. But that doesn't decode it. She has to find a terminal, and go into Side D, then load the files into a deciphering program to decode them. Some of these are puzzle hints, some are generic bullshit you already know about, and some are hints to puzzles the other character has to solve and you never see. That's not confusing at all. And there are 18 of these, all of which are just ancient text followed by a letter, in addition to all the other files you find, so it's hard to find any files if you need to read them again. So you go through some halls, destroy a couple parts of the ruins, wind through more halls, and hit a dead end. Backtrack to the terminal, and decode more ancient text to learn what stones to put in a couple eagle statues. I hope you found those because you need them, including one in a side room lodged in a statue where you can't see it. So you go put a stone in the first statue near the beginning of the level, then the second one, which means shooting a switch and stopping a platform in front of one eagle statue, there are 2 eagle statues, and open up the dead end. You can't stop it by hand because ice won't grab the platform once she jumps to it. You go downstairs, use your face to break down a wall, run through more halls, find a couple eagle statues you don't know what to do with yet, eventually find more text, go to a terminal to decode the answer, and go back to both of them to place the right stones. Keep going, put another stone in a statue, and come to a dead end and a puzzle that doesn't work yet. There's a sliding wall in the way, and you know where the switch is? 1 floor ago. After backtracking to the switch, it opens up the passage and lets you shoot some candles, which opens a wall, which gives a mask you need for a puzzle earlier in this floor. Go back to it with a hint that amounts to, I don't know, you figure it out, and try using the mask to figure out how the heads rotate so they all face up.
Or just look up the answer. Sci-Girls is the kind of game that sites like GameFAQs exist for.
Now take the stone from solving that puzzle and the mask, go back to the eagle statue, use it there, put the mask on another statue, solve a light puzzle, then escort a guy all the way back to the beginning of the level. That's 10 major examples of backtracking, plus all the times I went back to decode text, for a grand total of 15 examples of backtracking in a single stage. And that's if I don't miss any of the items I need to progress, and doesn't count backtracking out of Sci-D, or having to deal with enemies respawning once you move a couple rooms away. Add in that several puzzles are poorly explained or require a heavy amount of guesswork, and you've got the reason why it took so long for this video to come out. This is only made worse by the general level design. Everywhere you go, there are rooms and hallways leading in circles, and doors and shutters which would make things go faster that are permanently locked, like they're here just to tease you. Each Sci-Girls disc is actually a 3-hour game, but it's stretched and packed with filler to become a 7 or 8 hour game. That's according to the in-game timer, which can't possibly be right. It said I completed Ice's disc in about 8.5 hours, which is way shorter than the 16 hours of footage I have of one playthrough of the campaign.
And if you think I'm not going through every single bit of it in some vain attempt at catharsis, you clearly don't know me very well. I am going to be a little generous this time and give you a time code that you can skip to get to the last level.
Back at Net Justice Buenos Aires, Ice gets to a shutter. You have to backtrack almost to the beginning of the level to a control center so you can raise it.
I never imagined a shutter being here.
Really? A shutter is throwing you off? I've seen half a dozen of them to this point. You go down a floor and the game loads a tutorial telling you how to take cover. This is immediately after a gunfight against dozens of guards where you took cover behind a wall. Anyway, you find a cleaning robot which you need to open a door, but you need a remote control for that. So you go back upstairs, find a restroom tucked away in the corner of the lobby where it's sitting on the counter. And who left it here of all places? Go back downstairs, use it on the cleaning robot, and the game tells you how to hide behind cover. Again, it does this constantly. And you get to a server room, where it's so cold your life drains just being in the room for a few seconds.
How the fuck are these servers still running? Alright, if it's that cold, you're going to have either no moisture in the air, creating a buildup of static electricity, and computers just love that. Or you're going to have an excess of moisture in the air, which turns into frost and covers your servers inside and out. And if it's so cold that a person can't stand in the room for more than a minute without freezing to death, I would suggest you get some chalk and draw a little outline around all your servers, because you killed them. And you're supposed to be a data acquisitions company? I need to calm down. There are even dumber things in this game. Games.
The server room is way too cold, so you have to go back to another control room to fix that. But you have to run past that room to see a message on a random screen saying what to set the temperature to. You'd think you could just set the temperature to something that isn't below 0, but no, it has to be something specific. Even if you set it to be really hot, the room will still be freezing. So you set the right temperature, go back to the room and... oh, oops. That's okay, the servers are both freeze-proof and bulletproof. But now you have to connect data modulators to the server. Where are these? Scattered around the map, of course. If you don't have all of them, which is easy to do as they all look like generic item pickups and can be easily missed, you have to go back and find them. You connect them to the server by destroying it, then placing the modulator where it was connected.
Did I mention these games are really stupid? I'm not sure I've made that clear to this point.
Then Ice jacks into a computer. It's revealed she's different from other Sci-D users because she can dive directly into the computer with her psyche instead of needing some simulated avatar like everyone else. The tutorial for destroying the personal data files pops up almost every time you do it, and as you're about to dive out, the door locks and you get ambushed as Sancho cuts the feed.
If you get traced, my cover will be blown. No more Sancho.
This ambush consists of no enemies at all. That's okay, Ice gets forced out of Sci-D by Deus Ex Machina Girl before her brain implodes. Now you have to go back one floor so a helicopter can attack. A helicopter you can only damage with a rocket launcher in the room up the escalator, which I hadn't checked until now. You like this clip of me standing beside a door and only occasionally popping out to fire a rocket? This is how the whole fight went. The helicopter breakdances a bit and you go place a bomb on the emergency hatch. Oh, right, this bomb is from way earlier and was just sitting on a table next to the lounge. But you need it to blast open the— wait, I have a dozen grenades and a rocket launcher. Why do I need a bomb? And Ice escapes.
That was a thing. Let's see if Asuka's first mission is any better.
We are nothing but puppets anyway. They use us up and throw us away.
Hey, that's me when I get home from work. She gets inside the mansion and is looking for a terminal because reasons. You find a switch in the bathroom which does nothing because you have to find another switch to turn on that switch. Now the switch makes the bathroom an elevator, and you use a couple peepholes to find hidden passages in the wall and under the oven cooker. In one you grab a bomb, the same one as Ice, and use it on a shaky looking wall which is still standing. So you have to find another bomb by slicing a statue's arm off and putting it on an art piece. You get that bomb, and just to tease you, the terminal you're looking for shows up whenever the art piece rotates. That bomb still doesn't blow up the wall, so you just kick it down. Asuka isn't allowed to climb on the roof to reach the terminal because that would end this level much faster, so she has to wander around until Kogetsu steals the elevator and opens up an underground path, where you push a drawer out so you can backtrack to the other passage and grab a card key out of it. Then go back to the other passage to turn a giant gear so the terminal faces the right way and dive into Sci-D with it. There you learn the pot hook in the main hall is a way to the top floor, so you backtrack again, but Kogetsu gets caught by a guy named Benigumo, who killed their dad. He whips out his ninja handgun and threatens to kill Kogetsu if she doesn't surrender. But then...
Don't be stupid.
Hold on. Wait. Stop. Was it supposed to look like CG blew up the building and killed everyone, including Asuka's brother? Because that's what that looked like. I mean, holy shit, no wonder she wants nothing to do with you.
Ice confronts Sancho about ditching her, displaying her wide range of one emotion.
I could kill you right now and not feel any pangs of conscience at all, you know. And I hate the idea of not getting my share of the reward. You owe me big for this one.
Just because your name is Ice doesn't mean you have to act like a frigid bitch the entire game. Yeah, it's not just when she's justified being that way. She is like this the entire game.
They realize a member of Sci-Girls rescued Ice earlier, which means they're investigating the FGC, a massive monopoly-like corporation and the parent company of Net Justice.
Next time you call me that, I'll fill you full of holes.
Oh no, Sancho was such a complex and sympathetic figure to this point.
Freeze! Put down your gun and surrender!
Oh, I'm so stupid. I'm supposed to shout freeze before I shoot everything that moves.
Ice gets captured, then run through a scanner of some kind and put in a holding cell. Apparently no one inspects these cells because there's a pair of sunglasses with two-way communication under the bed. Sci-Girl Raven opens the cell and Ice runs to the lab to get a pistol. She can't steal one from the guards because that requires being stealthy or hand-to-hand, and that's asking way too much of her. Now she has to get to an elevator, but there are too many guards in the way.
Ice may have killed 74 guards in that Net Justice building, but they have 75 guards in this prison, so she is shit out of luck.
Raven's solution to this is to hack open all the prison cells and incite a riot, because who cares about those prisoners anyway? Well, since Raven hacked open your cell earlier, it makes sense that she gets lazy and forces you to do it.
However, it's impossible to release the locks from outside.
You released the lock on Ice's cell 5 minutes ago!
You have to hack into Sci-D and open the locks, but this level is specifically designed to waste as much time as possible. There are 4 prison blocks, all on different sides of the map, and they're all connected by a series of rotating corridors with only 2 door openings. You have to use switches on the floor to rotate them into position and make a path to each block. Some require you to steal a Nerf gun from the guard so you can bounce a shot off the wall and hit another switch. One end of the path has to connect to a room at the middle of the map, because that's the only place where you can go into Sci-D, and the cells are opened by modulating files in front of each prison cell. You can't get to all the rooms in one go, so you need to keep setting up a path, backtracking to dive in, modulating files, backtracking to dive out, and repeat.
Say what? You want to know who I am? I'll leave that to your imagination, baby.
It would be really embarrassing if I could see your name right above the broadcast feed.
Elite Paramilitary Group.
Did I mention stun locking is a thing in this game? I'm not sure if I did. After letting 11 prisoners loose, which doesn't seem to distract the guards at all, you rearrange the rooms again to reach the exit, and meet the prison warden.
My orders are not to kill you.
Which is why I just tried to shoot you in the head. Wait.
One dead warden later, Ice ends up in a dark courtyard where the objective is to defeat the pursuer and climb a wall. What pursuer? Which wall? Well, unless you count the respawning guards, there is no pursuer. And you're supposed to find this box, push it into this ledge, and that does the trick.
We're here. Hurry up.
And Mr. X must have been really desperate for gigs after Resident Evil Survivor. I was joking, come on!
Ice doesn't go with Mystery Robot and runs in a circle away from his tank. Yeah, there was a game before Sonic 06 which had a terrible running at the screen so you run into shit constantly level. Eventually the Sci-Girls show up and pick up Ice, revealing they orchestrated the escape and helped her out of Sci-D at the Net Justice building.
You saved my life twice, and I'm really grateful for that. But now, I must be going.
Frigid and self-centered. If only she had one more admirable personality trait.
You get reward money too?
This much per case.
Why didn't you say so?
There we go, she's greedy.
Okay, this is going to be way too long of a video if I show every instance of Sci-Girls deliberately wasting my time. So I'm going to try and stick to the story and the really bad puzzles from here on out.
Diving's what you do, isn't it? Contact us when you've made sure the doctor's safe.
It's okay. I don't know what to do with my arms when I'm talking either.
Asuka comes to and is reprimanded by the extremely monotone coffee.
I wish you wouldn't keep causing us all this trouble.
Whoa, hey! Switch to decaf, lady. You are out of control! She offers to ignore Asuka's desertion if she helps them infiltrate Net Justice's Far East branch and hack into their files. Asuka turns them down and runs off, which they don't seem to care about, so she can go to Net Justice's Far East branch and hack into their files.
But you just said that... Why don't you both
But first, she has to reprogram a bunch of cleaning robots to get access to the rest of the building. This involves ripping out their data chips and dumping them into a terminal. 3 things. 1, you don't put the chips back, so how do the robots still work at the end of this fetch quest? 2, you have to run around using a remote control everywhere to find some of them. And these little bastards can hide inside solid objects, climb walls, and even go through the ventilation system. And 3, you have to find 16 of these little bastards spread across 2 floors. Asuka finds information on a project called Cybersphere, which says it can end unemployment and starvation by creating a new cyber world.
Because not only are there no unemployed people on the internet, files are both nutritious and delicious.
I may have missed a file or two, but this was the only mention of Cybersphere I can remember from the entire game. I'd just like to point out how the system requests people report anyone suspicious in Psi-D, but you constantly see avatars hoping they get hacked because their jobs are apparently that boring. Lots of backtracking later, Asuka does a sliding server puzzle to get a door unlocked, because in the future, everyone loves sliding block puzzles. She finds proof Benigumo acted under the FGC to kill her father. They only partially destroyed this evidence because she gets caught after jumping out of Psi-D, but unlike Ice, she's capable of getting away herself. She escapes to the roof but is cornered, only for Coffee to bail her out.
Or just save your thanks for later.
What? I can't hear you over the gunfire. Try raising your voice slightly.
Over here. You'll just keep doing the same thing again and again.
Then stop her from doing it again and again.
No, you shut up. We tell headquarters we're out investigating, and here we are all the way over in Tokyo.
That's what you told her to do in the first place. Headquarters won't give a shit.
Over and over in this game, Asuka breaks protocol, tells Sci-Girls to stay out of it and that she has to do this herself, and CG responds by doing absolutely nothing to stop her and just hoping that she happens to do something they want. CG is the crappy parent who wonders why their kid throws rocks at cars but doesn't do anything to stop it. Let's go back to Ice. I need a break from this disc. I'll spare you the Ruins recap, but Ice is here to find Dr. Zukovsky, a critical member of CG. She finds the doctor, who says she has something called the Marjana gene. But before he can give her the data on the ruins, an FGC operative finds them and holds them up. Then someone called the MFP wanders into the room and starts fighting the FGC, and you have to escort the doctor out through the gunfight. Aside from being incredibly slow, you have to let him push you through doors. Otherwise, this happens.
I'm having trouble to breathe here.
And when he gets stuck, you can't open the door and have to start this section over.
Enjoy the paralyzer!
The FGC captures the Doctor and Ice, again, and she's forced into Psi-D by X. The MFP interrupts by arresting X and telling Ice to piss off.
We never find out what MFP stands for. And I sure hope those MFP guys don't get bodied by X and never show up again. We thank you for your sacrifice. Also, that data from the ruins never gets mentioned again.
Asuka leads CG to a plant on the Marshall Islands. Though going by the level names, she goes to Plant 2 first instead of Plant 1.
Do everything you can to keep away from the research staff. If we cause trouble here, it will be an international incident.
Because killing dozens of armed guards is fine, but one researcher? Imagine all the Facebook outrage. Because file conversion doesn't exist in the future, and Asuka can't just upload it to CG for the tech experts to decrypt, she has to find a disk and burn everything to that first. If you thought that disk wouldn't be on the opposite side of the map away from any dive terminals, you clearly haven't been paying attention. Asuka has to dive into several different terminals to get information on how they need carriers of a certain gene other than Ice. Yeah, they reference her being a dumbass and getting caught. One of them actually mentions Asuka's mother being captured. They ignore a room full of clones that look like Ice, because everyone in CG is in their own little world and doesn't share intel, and she finds out the FGC is digging up mummies at some ruins because they're that desperate for this gene they apparently need.
I'm out, and I've got the data.
Omae wa mada tatamono ni iru. Aho.
And so Asuka, instead of going directly to CG, has to use a go-between agent in Spain to hand off the data, because reasons. Ice has to go to a party in Spain, specifically because the client requested a blonde American girl, because they can't just have another American girl do it and dye her hair blonde. She's trying to meet an unusually picky agent at a party for FGC founding a new branch. Why did they have to meet there of all places? So Ice can wear a dress. That's pretty much it. They don't even tell her why she has to do this mission.
Why won't anyone tell me what this job is really about?
Especially watch out for security. If they are suspicious, it's all over.
You heard her, guys. Blend in. These guys are on their A game tonight. They will be on you like that. You can't run at all for most of the mission. Partly because she can only jog in that dress, but also because if you're in a guard's line of sight and running, they'll stop you. Then you do an incredibly slow QuickTime event to flirt with the guard, which apparently causes them to forget the past 10 seconds and let you go. Even if you fail, you get 2 more tries. So, what's the point of this? Ma'am, those sunglasses look really out of place on you. I have boobs. Carry on. At the same time, Asuka has to avoid being seen by guards or guests by using a ninja cloak, which makes her pretty much invisible if she isn't running, even though she's told it won't work if she's moving at all. Man, this would really be useful for every other mission in the game. Also, they took one of the things I liked the most about Asuka, her speed, and got rid of it. If she gets seen by a guard, they need about 10 seconds for that one brain cell to fire telling them a ninja wasn't invited to the party, so she has lots of time to run away. She finds a note from the contact, Mr. Putty, and is told to take a bell and ring it outside a certain room.
Hear ye, hear ye! I'm trying to be stealthy and avoid attracting attention!
Putty leads Asuka on a long paper trail through Sci-D, most of which are files about flowers, to hint at which room she needs to find. To get there, she has to go through a door with a guard right in front of it, so she has to get seen and immediately rush through the door. Except he's not there, and this was a waste of time. Ice walks by the same 3 robotic-looking party guests, and if you could ignore the black lines in the upper right corner of the screen, that would be great, okay? Then Flame goes against the mission and says to distract the guards by making a commotion. Ice hears this and sets a room on fire. Ma'am, where were you when that fire started? I gotta pee. Carry on. She finds the contact and...
I like Oriental woman, but a white woman smells very sweet too.
Fucking hell, this is awful. I'm talking about the dialogue and the acting. And it's not just this guy. There's crappy acting throughout the game, namely from Flame and Coffee.
I think there's an ID somewhere in here. Won't you go search? Raven, can you hear me? Raven! There is no answer.
There's another team after FGC as well, and they're headed for the space elevator.
In order to stabilize the server operation. If you go on, you'll be frozen to death.
Some of the cast members only voiced in 1 or 2 or no things after this, but there are a surprising number of people who had long careers before and after Sci-Girls, including Michael McConaughey and Michelle Ruff. So when I did that Bloody Roar 4 video, another Konami product from around the same time, and said that I didn't know if it was the voice actors or the voice direction that was to blame, now we know.
There's an explosion somewhere, so the guy runs off before giving Ice the intel. Ice says, fuck stealth, rips off her skirt, and immediately starts shooting guards.
Would you believe me if I told you it was Asuka? Because it was Asuka. So does Sci-Girls have any idea what they're doing? They have 2 operatives in the same place at the same time, and no one is communicating with each other.
Putty left Asuka a bomb, which she immediately threw at a guard who walked in the room and saw her. This makes even less sense because I had the ninja cloak on at the time.
Change your strategy. Don't worry about being stealth.
English good grammar indeed, Coffee. Putty forces you to go digging through Sci-D, again, and he finally shows up and complains about Asuka being Asian before they exchange data. The guards have force fields up everywhere, including in front of the exit, so you wander around until this happens.
I didn't think there were any ninjas still around in this day and age. And I sure never thought I'd ever meet one.
Hold it! You're both on the same side!
Only when they're about to kill each other does anyone at Sci-Girls think, maybe we should tell them they're on the same side. Hell, Flame doesn't even know her name and just calls her the Ninja.
Seems like the ninja that was here dropped something.
And as you're going through the party hall, you can fail the mission if any of the guests get shot. Guests who constantly run in front of enemies. One of the force fields just disappears after that, so Asuka gets out.
but I ran into a woman in the mansion.
A woman? Who?
Someone with the Magiana gene.
So Raven knows that both of them are in CG and doesn't tell Coffee, Asuka's primary point of contact, even though Ice shows up in several of the documents Asuka picks up throughout her campaign. So are they racing to see who finishes the investigation first, or are they just in contact? Never mind, I know the answer to that. There's a scratch on it.
After learning FGC stands for Future Genesis Corporation, and the captive Dr. Zukovsky's asked for cloning equipment at the Marshall Islands, there's mention of a space elevator, which doesn't come into play until much later. Also, this is when the game starts hiding files inside D, and you can't find them without the search skill. Yet another time waster. Ice uploads the backup data he had, and I guess steals a motorcycle outside.
Flame, I'm going to the South Pacific because there might be someone trying to do something fishy with the same gene I have.
It would better be true, though. It might be a trap.
That tone of voice says Flame is already planning for when Ice gets herself caught again.
Also, Ice just starts giving orders to CG, and they hardly question them. What is the leadership structure here? Asuka goes to the ruins on her own to hunt for mummies, because that's more important than her mother, I guess, so she can also decode a bunch of text and solve a planet alignment puzzle. And there's another sliding block puzzle, which has 6 pieces that have to... Wait, there were only 5 in the room. Well then where's the 6th block? I know I've solved every puzzle to this point, so I should... Are you shitting me? The 6th block is invisible.
This was not intentional. This was a bug. A bug which completely ground the game to a standstill. Now, if I seem unusually calm about this game going the extra mile to piss me off, it's because you can't see the pile of bodies just off camera.
So, after that load of shit, you go back to the start of the level and make an elevator appear so Asuka can descend to the tomb of a woman, who's not buried or entombed at all. And she leads X and the FGC right to it.
Your mother was...
What? What did you just say?
You fool!
Wow, someone did something dumb and got punished for it. Take note, Cardinal Garrison. Asuka takes a small piece of the mummy and runs off, because clearly the FGC can't use the rest of it. Asuka gets stopped by a rocket launcher soldier when X knocks him out and tries to sweet-talk Asuka into joining the FGC. When she flat-out refuses, he quite rationally guns down all the nearby soldiers and gives Asuka the keys to the getaway vehicle.
I already did the get frustrated and walk away bit earlier, so now I don't know what to do.
I really wish you'd stop acting on your own, you know.
Then do something about it! But they don't. The FGC send a video of Benigumo with Asuka's mother, and now she finally decides it would be a good idea to rescue her.
Do you think that after we've been made fools of like this, that we're going to stand back and not say anything?
Well, you've done that the entire game, so why stop now?
Ice and company go to the Marshall Islands, and get caught. But fortunately, the guards in this game are incredibly stupid, on par with the guards from the party hall.
You're lucky. Most guys don't get that far in the first date.
Is it too late to start rooting for the FGC? I think I've had enough of Cardinal Garrison's shit.
So Asuka and company go back to the Marshall Islands plant. Yeah, the game itself is backtracking to somewhere Asuka already went. She finds her mother, but something's a bit off.
When I was a lad, I injected 4 dozen steroids every morning to help me get large.
No, I don't know why this happens, but she can be flash grenaded to death, so at least the boss fight's really easy. Asuka and company respond by disposing of the unfinished clone soldiers and erasing all the data in the factory, which she has to do from 2 different locations. and by solving a puzzle involving family members of a factory employee. There's also a open one door and other doors close and open puzzle, which doesn't make any sense. There's no easily apparent rhyme or reason to how they behave, so it was nothing short of guesswork that got me past this point. But then...
Are you surprised? Running into your dead brother? So while in some sense I am your brother, I am also nothing more than a combat avatar.
You know, this would be threatening if I couldn't just use slow and then pummel him in the corner the entire fight.
Follow Benigmo. I'm sure he's at the space elevator by now.
You're not in charge here. Oh, who am I kidding? They're just gonna follow her anyway. And of course, it turns out they're going to the same place, the space elevator. Ice, Raven, and Ash try to infiltrate the lab, and the plan is for Ash to shoot the guards while Ice sneaks in, directly past the guards. That's as stupid as bringing a swimsuit to a gunfight. This is also where Ice finds a heavy machine gun, which is one of the worst weapons in the game. First off, its aim is terrible. It's hard to hit anything, even with auto-lock, from further than 10 feet away. Second, because it's a heavy weapon, you can't grab ledges while holding it. And third, you can't unequip it without dropping it. When you drop it, it disappears, so you can't come back for it if you need it later. Ice has to solve a badly explained math puzzle to mess with the drug doses for one of the clone production lines, because apparently any other combination will still work. You have to input dosages for 5 different drugs, and each number affects the other. So even though one file says drug B should be set to 9, that's not right. When you put in drug A, drug B starts off at -16. So you have to make it positive and add 9 to make it 25, because 25 minus 16 is 9. This could have been way better if the in-game explanation of the puzzle weren't utter shit. Ice finds Dr. Zukovsky, and a person who Ice never finds out is Asuka's mother, who Benigumo plans to execute. It can just be assumed that she got here before Asuka.
I'm not going to let you get away with this!
And for the Triple Crown of Failure, the main baddie, FGC President Alan Wilson, gets away after this cutscene. Wait a minute, Benigumo's face isn't scarred here. Continuity? What's that word mean? Fortunately, Flame specializes in covering for dumbass CG agents and reveals Dr. Zukovsky is actually an android, one that's completely unaffected by bullets to the head. Newly revived, he says the FGC wants complete control of Psi-D and plans to use Ice's genes to do it, since she has the all-important Marjana gene, which is important because, yes. They also wanted to use the space elevator to hold their main presence in space, both to protect themselves and to control the world's electrical supply.
Do generators not exist? Do you not have any other form of power, backup, or otherwise you could use in case the solar panels fail?
They go deeper into the lab.
You open a route to go underground. It can't be. A hidden entrance leading underground.
You told her to open an underground path, and you're surprised she opened an underground path? Fuck this, what's Asuka doing?
Asuka starts off with one of the worst puzzles on the entire disc. You have about 15 crates and an elevator you need to go up. The elevator only works when it has exactly 547 kilograms of weight on it. In other words, this is the most useless elevator I've ever seen. So you have to dive into Psi-D and figure out what each box weighs. Then figure out how they can add up to 547. Except you have to account for Asuka's weight, so you add that to the boxes and then try to get it to 547. Then push all the boxes one by one onto the elevator. I'm begging for the ladder from Snake Eater at this rate. One fantastic boss fight later, Asuka eventually gets the shuttle working by touching a dozen or so crystals and takes off. Raven gets her dumbass in a poison gas trap. And no, she doesn't get her own counter. So Ice has to waste time figuring out how to make medicine to heal her, at which point she still can't move and Flame says, fuck it, just go back to the mission. Fun fact, That trap was set up because Asuka hacked in here earlier. So because they're so unorganized, Sci-Girls almost just got one of their own operatives killed. Ice takes an elevator and ends up in a room full of clones of herself.
Not only can they not dive, they aren't even pretty.
I've been cutting these until now, but the game constantly references how pretty the Sci-Girls are and the people they're fighting aren't. So if you have a daughter who's into video games, I'm sure this will be a great influence on her.
After killing a couple dozen bootleg Alexia Ashfords, they find the plant manager, and the plant starts its self-destruct sequence because reasons. After fighting her cyber clones, I thought those were the failed experiments. The manager gets superpowers, none of which are being bulletproof, and he dies.
It was impossible to disarm the self-destruct.
Guys, the plant's going to explode. We don't have time for spell check. Ice escapes and they figure out, or rather just guess, the FGC is going to recreate Damnation Monday and take control of the net. Still not sure why they needed the Marjana gene. They don't need a diver for this plan to work. In fact, they'd be better off ensuring no one with the gene is alive to mess with their plans. This is becoming less about who's smarter and more about who's not quite as dumb.
The only way to get to the space station that they are building is by shuttle. So you have to sneak into a shuttle that's ready to launch.
Ice's body count is almost in quadruple digits, and you're asking her to sneak somewhere? There are air raid sirens more subtle than her.
She modulates files with a bunch of random words for names in specific orders to open a bunch of doors. Then she preps a shuttle for launch and gets cut off by one of Wilson's goons. He's a boss which you beat by standing still and shooting him a lot. Then he reveals his robot form and stun locks you to death. This is the one time Ice actually needs to sneak around, because you can sort of stun lock him by shooting him from behind. But then he comes back in a mech. But my move slightly from side to side strategy was way too difficult for him to overcome. Ice launches into the space elevator and docks with the space station. And now she and Asuka do virtually the same mission, but with slightly different puzzles. Both go through a section which is done twice, right side up and upside down. Both go through 5 different parts of the station in a specific order. Both do time-consuming Sci-D word puzzles to find access files. But Ice runs out of ammo easily, and Asuka has to deal with security trivia questions about music, tea, weightlifting, and butterflies. A fair trade-off. Ice confronts Wilson, but X gets the drop on her again.
It's about time, isn't it? You have your orders about what to do with me, don't you? Surely even an undercover MFP investigator gets bored with play acting sometime.
So X was against him the whole time?
Then why did Wilson keep X around this whole time? And why does X keep up the charade until right as Damnation Monday is about to start? Well, except for that part where he gunned down a bunch of guards to get Asuka free. A+ undercover work, buddy. And speaking of...
Once I've made sure what your scheme is, I'm going to put you under arrest.
By the way X phrased this, he still doesn't have enough evidence against Wilson. And why was he fighting the MFP earlier if they're on the same side? Is MFP somehow less in the loop than the Cardinal Garrison?
It doesn't matter. Wilson somehow swapped out X's chip, which apparently X let him do, and turned him against Ice.
Once I reset the whole world, there won't be any record of my crimes. And all I need now is this girl.
You still haven't explained why you need her for whatever. One robot fight later.
You're useless, aren't you? Dispose of yourself.
You know, guys, there's such a thing as slow motion being too slow. And your fast-paced music is only making it feel like it's taking even longer. Then somehow, X regains control of himself and takes a bullet for Ice. Somehow, Wilson doesn't deflect bullets like he did earlier, and somehow, this game still isn't over. Asuka gets here after Ice, despite being a step ahead of her almost the entire way up to this point, and she finally learns Ice's name from X. Benigumo tries to kill her, fails, monologues about how he's going to pick up where Wilson left off, and they run off to a hovering platform for a proper final boss fight. Back with Ice, Wilson put an avatar of himself in the computer which can still initiate Damnation Monday, so it's off to Sci-D for that last battle. Like most Sci-D encounters, this consists of using slow over and over to neutralize the security programs, but it also includes spin-kicking Wilson in the face over and over. This area has the worst hit detection for the break skill I've seen in the entire game. You can be in perfect position to break these crystals, and it simply won't work. She kills Wilson, so crisis averted, but now Sci-D is going to collapse in on itself because reasons. She has to escape the shuttle, which includes doing an incredibly awkward 0G section Asuka also did earlier, and she escapes before... Whoa, hey, hold on a minute, I thought Sci-D was self-destructing, not the whole goddamn space station. Ice stands victorious as she's told of another mission, infiltrating a net justice office in Calcutta. I'm going to count that as Sci-Girls reusing the same level idea 3 times. For the ending, no less. Asuka's final confrontation with Benigumo is incredibly underwhelming. He doesn't move around much, he's really easy to hit, and he tends to just run in circles like a doofus. But that's just phase 1. In phase 2, he does the exact same thing. He's just a slightly more annoying generic ninja. Whatever, at least that means I can end the fight quickly.
There's a scratch on this disc too, and it has very dramatic timing.
Asuka and Benigumo reenact part of Ninja Gaiden, or most anime with sword fighting for that matter, and he dies. She visits the graves of her family members, and some rather rude ninjas try to jump her. She kills them, and that's it.
At least both discs are finished now, so the Sci-Girls video game experiment is over and done. Excuse me one moment. Don't play Sci-Girls.
There are games with worse stories than Sci-Girls. There are games with worse controls than Sci-Girls. There are games less fun than Sci-Girls. None of this makes me hate Sci-Girls any less. Besides, the "at least it's not as bad as Game X" argument is admitting that both games are bad. Sci-Girls throws a bunch of one-dimensional characters showing less personality than the figures they're based on into baby's first espionage action game and tries to get away with doing the absolute bare minimum to make the game playable. But they completely forgot to make it enjoyable. Then to top it off, it stretches the runtime to the breaking point, a prime example of quantity over quality. The bonus level select mode where you can play as a couple other characters is absolutely not worth it. The sad part is, if these games cut out 1/3, okay, ideally half, but 1/3 of the backtracking and the more nonsensical puzzles, I would have recommended them. They would still have all their other problems, but then I could write it off as a dispensable, big dumb action game with a little fan service. I'd buy that for $1. Sci-Girls? No. Don't get both discs, don't get either disc. Just go play No One Lives Forever and No One Lives Forever 2. Or if you're that desperate for more Sci-Girls, go get DreamMix TV World Fighters because Asuka is a hidden character in that. And just for completion's sake, Beyond the 8th Dimension never happened. And there was much rejoicing.
Somehow this game got the best treatment in Japan, a label which means less and less each time I see it. Or maybe this is like how Sonic 06 got that bullshit Platinum Family Hits label. Either way, even if you like the looks of the Sci-Girls figurines, cool, girls. But if you like the looks of the Sci-Girls game, I got bad news for you because it's actually hot garbage. Beauty here is only skin deep. And with all the time I wasted on that, I got a lot of catching up to do on the Stanley Cup playoffs. Huh. None of my channels are coming through.
You know, the planet is in a jam, a diabolical plan of only one man. A paradigm and international funk, and allow me 3 A's or he people jump.
Yeah, invaders, you forgot about the boys and the guy who made us. Zip Zoolander, master of boy spots.
We want to mind the plot. We're split boys, and we like making noise. Make a shot, intelligent joy.
And I can taste the heat, but don't forget, you are what you eat.
Tell me what, let me swivel and say, I rock to the dock and I save the day.
Dirty's the name and the brain is my game. Any problem I can fix.
My name is Ninjas, the bad hinges. How I use my sword and singes.
I'm Zip Zoolander, ZZ for short, you know I fight the corp, I'm the boss master. Listen up, you all, you're the boys brigade. When it's laser time, put on the